Cancer. Welcome to your August 2019 relationship reading. It's Rena here. This is a reading for people in troubled relationships, or in some cases, people who are not in a relationship, but they want to go back with somebody. Okay. Okay. So we have here at the heart of the matter the Four of Swords, which is a card that's associated with, perhaps in this particular case, it would be a legal separation. I laugh because of that lamb. I mean, it just doesn't... I'm sure it meant something to the artist, but I'm like trying to scratch my head figuring that one out. Because the four of Swords in general is a card of rejuvenation and taking time out to be with one's thoughts. So in a love relationship, I'm thinking about somebody who is legally separated from somebody, perhaps, like living in a different physical location, maybe like taking a vacation by themselves to try to get your head together to decide what to do next, those kind of things. Or maybe planning on doing something like that you feel that you need to. And one reason why you might feel this way is that you want to make sure that you're not being influenced by anything else. And if you have a lot of stressors in your life in general. I do have here several Pentacles cards, so this could even apply to work matters, and you may be like just kind of already almost like burnt out and dealing with a negative relationship, but wondering if perhaps your other obligations are creating some of the tension in your relationship. In the past position, we have the Eight of Pentacles. This is one of my favorite drawings of this deck because I think it does really illustrate what this card represents, which is a card of being very industrious and being very good at one's craft. Now, in a personal relationship, this can be somebody who is really putting in the effort in the relationship. And maybe what happened, and what usually happens, is you have one person really trying to save the relationship and the other person is just not plugged in. So there's no way for it to work. You can't have a one-sided situation. And it's kind of like a hard reality to face, because when you want something and you feel like it's not happening, it can be very sad, especially if you have children together, which, kind of increases that connection with that person. But if there is something along those lines, you have to face the fact that the relationship is what it is, and not to try to, like, what would they call that? Glorify it, but there's another word, act like it's anything other than it is. And it is a good idea. I think if you are with somebody all the time, it is a good idea to physically separate from them, even if it's just informally, so that you can kind of hear your own voice and you don't have somebody else kind of talking to you. And also so that you don't get into that compulsive habit of always trying to make something work, which I think is what the Eight of Pentacles means in this case, where you're trying too hard on your end, and in the process, forgetting that it takes two. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where I was going with that. The higher message is the moon card. And the moon card is, it's funny because you're ruled by the moon, but actually this card connects with Pisces. What this means to me is that as the spiritual message, if you're with somebody who is, for instance, addicted to something, alcohol or some other substance, that clouds their judgment, that is mood altering, that person has to deal with that problem. So I think that this is not that uncommon, where a person may be having a problem in their marriage, and they're trying to be good enough for that other person, and maybe the person's very critical or has angry outbursts, and they think if they only can be the perfect spouse, that person is going to be happy with them. And it has nothing to do with you. It has to do with the fact that they have an addiction, and the addiction isn't really the culprit ultimately either. It's really that the person has some issues within themselves that they're not facing. And they are blaming, they are kind of like turning outward their, blame towards others for what their own failings are. And people do this because they feel like, some people do it just because they're out of touch with the fact that they are the one that is the problem. But some people do it because they want to keep the other person on edge and constantly trying to impress the partner and stuff. And that is, a control tactic. So the other thing about the moon card is that it can indicate self-deception. So on your part, Cancer, how do you spin the narrative? Do you make excuses for somebody because you think that, because you want it to be a certain way, when in fact the relationship is really in bad shape, and you're just kind of saying, well, if this happens or if that happens, then it's going to be fine, when in fact it's not going to be fine. It really is in trouble because the other person isn't taking responsibility for their problems, and they're kind of trying to push them on you. And the Eight of Pentacles can even be like you trying to carry the weight of the relationship and enable that person in various ways, and that's not good for them. So if you really care about somebody else, you're going to realize what is your responsibility, and only accept that responsibility, but not accept everything. What crosses you is the Two of Pentacles. You may be pulled in different directions, and I'm talking about in other areas of your life. I think I've gotten something like this recently for Cancer, maybe in the general tarot reading. It seems familiar. But what I was saying before is that Cancer is a very caring sign, tends to take care, a caretaker type of a individual, taking care of others. I think with the Four of Swords, you have to nourish yourself and start to focus on self-care and just plain old rest. The Two of Pentacles can have you with a lot on your plate, and maybe you feel that stress, and that creates a sense of instability within yourself, where you feel like you don't have enough rest, you don't have enough free time. because you have to do different things in different areas of your life. And time is a really important component. If you feel like almost every moment of your day is accounted for, I highly recommend that you see if you can pare down your life more so that you don't have to run around so hectically in your life, because your life is a work of art, and I say that not as some kind of grandiose thing, but just simply it's to be enjoyed. So if you have all these obligations, perhaps it's simply because you have a hard time saying no. And maybe you need to delegate. Maybe you need to just grow a backbone if you feel like guilty if you say no. Think about what you need. And if you're in a relationship with somebody who doesn't honor that need and who's always seems like they need you, you may think that that's great, but they may not be mutually concerned about your needs. So please do that for yourself, because no one else is, I'm not saying no one else. Some people are tuned in enough to tell their partner that, hey, why don't you go on a short trip or something like that. But a lot of times you can't count on that, and you have to do it for yourself. And you should do it for yourself. It really isn't anybody else's responsibility to tell you when you need a break and things like that. So that could also be what's going on, where you feel a great deal of stress and obligation in your life, and it's kind of catching up to you. The advice, or what's coming in, is the Knight of Pentacles. They call it the Son of Pentacles here. Knight of Pentacles is a very work-oriented card, putting one foot in front of the other and just really working. I have a couple of these cards. The Eight of Pentacles can be similar in some ways. So there may be, the Two of Pentacles can be that you're working two jobs, and that may be to your detriment. Because we have it in the middle, the Four of Swords, which is kind of like maybe even taking a breather, a vacation. But it's not just going on a cruise. It's really kind of like a very contemplative time, going to a retreat center where you're not, necessarily doing any kind of partying and going into the ocean or anything like that, but you're just really getting your head clear about something, cleared out. And the Knight of Pentacles is a card that is associated with Taurus. Okay, so if Taurus is somebody that you are connected to, what I see though is, I think that if let's say you are in a relationship with an alcoholic, you may just decide, I have other obligations right now, so I can't really uproot my life, but I'm going to do something productive. I'm going to just lose myself in my work and just bide my time until either I feel stronger to pursue this, or maybe something else is going to come up that makes it an easier thing to do. So in other words, just kind of channeling your energy in a direction that feels more productive than simply worrying about something or trying to make the relationship work. See, that's the other thing too. With the Knight of Pentacles, if you did just go to work every day and just kind of focus on your own dreams, you can gradually disengage from that other person without it being a big deal, without being a blow up. And this is part of you know, stopping codependency is to pull away your attention from other people's problems and start doing things that make you feel more in control of your life. The outcome is the Mother of Cups, which is your card, is Cancer. And this is a very intuitive card. Oh, it's interesting that they have these stars. When I was going to sleep last night, I had the weirdest experience. And I was just like closing my eyes and I saw all of this. It was like a galaxy. And it's not the typical when you see stars type of thing. I can't explain it. It's very interesting. I don't know what that meant. But it reminded me of that because I hadn't been thinking about it, but you have that in the background too. And really, it's possible that the artist drew that because the Mother of Cups is a very psychic energy. And of course, Cancer is a water sign, so you have natural intuitive gifts. And it's interesting because I have two cards here that are associated with intuition. The Moon and the Queen of Cups. And both of these cards connect with you in some way. I mean, the Moon may be associated with Pisces, but you're ruled by the Moon, so you can't just totally ignore that, can you, Cancer? But I feel like you need to let your intuition guide you in terms of what move to make. If you feel that your relationship has run its course, but there are extenuating circumstances that make it difficult for you to leave right now. You may have a partner who's an alcoholic and you don't want to leave them high and dry. You don't feel that that would be right. You want to have some kind of a support system in place for that person, so that they will be, so somebody will be checking in on them, and that you won't feel guilty about just leaving them. You may have children, and actually the Mother of Cups, that mothering energy is present. And it could be that that is the deciding thing, is the fact that you are a mother and thinking about your children and saying, what is best for my children in this scenario? Is it best for my children to be exposed to this relationship? And you know how it's funny because I was reading about how so many adults use the excuse that they can't get divorced because of the children. And really it's because they're afraid of making the change. It has nothing to do with the children. They're using the children as an excuse. And a lot of times the children feel a sense of relief when there's a lot of tension in the home. It obviously it depends on how the parents get along. Some parents want to split up and they don't really have a problem getting along. And the children may perceive that as more of a shock than in other situations. So it's very interesting. But in any case, I hope that you enjoyed this. And if you'd like a personal reading, my website is rainamoonastrology.com and the link is below. Take care. Bye.